When Emily opened the message, her heart sank. It was a photo, her sleeping, but the most disturbing thing wasn't the image. It was the detail no one but her could know. The curtain half open, the position of the hand under the pillow, and the lamplight, which only stayed when she had nightmares. She remained motionless for seconds with the cell phone shaking in her hand. There was sender. There was no name, just the text. You breathe slowly when you're scared. 3 days earlier, Emily had received a notification. Day with 0 followers, 0 posts, and no visible name. Only one person followed, she. At first, she thought it was just another bot or fake account. That profile was watching all her stories in seconds, even the deleted ones, even the ones she barely remembered posting. And now, that photo. That tone of who I wasn't just watching, but was close. That same night, Brian, a former schoolmate, received an audio by email. The recording muffled with noise in the background, but his voice was clear. The voice of someone who whispered exactly the words he had said in an outburst 7 years ago, a connection he thought was secure, which was never, which came between him and a friend who no longer lives in the country, and no mouse to email. Subject: Jacob is watching. Sarah. The other hand didn't receive a message. She was followed, literally. She felt footsteps behind her at night after work. He looked back 3 times. But when he got home, he saw the same profile that followed Emily, now followed her too. And I had liked a single photo, one from 3 years ago. She was smiling in the bathroom mirror. The detail. This photo was deleted less than 2 minutes after posting, because she thought the look was too, but someone had saved it, and that someone was following them all. The name Jacob came about by chance. The profile name. But it was the name of the boy everyone knew from school, still invisible, almost erased from memory. I never posted. Nobody responded, but now he seemed to know everything about everyone. Jacob disappeared from the map, deleted from real life. But it was more alive than ever. The notifications continued, messages too, and the pattern was clear. He only followed one person at a time. Never in bulk. It was always someone new, and then something happened. Emily, Brian, Sarah, they were all connected. Everyone received until, without warning, a new person joined the list, Claire H., a woman no one knew. But from that night onwards, became the new and the scariest thing. Claire didn't have Instagram, not even Facebook, not TikTok. She was the type person who preferred the offline world. I was suspicious of the exposure. I avoided cameras. And I lived with the constant feeling there were already too many people paying attention to everything. Maybe that's why he isolated himself in that as a night security guard. A small silent room, in front of a panel with screens transmitting images of empty commercial building. It was monotonous work, but for Claire it meant peace. Nobody to her, no one expecting her to post where she was, what she was doing, what she was thinking. The routine was always the same. She would at 10 p.m. do her rounds on the first 3 floors and then lock herself in the surveillance room until 6 a.m. Cameras were there, all turned on. 32 screens monitoring every corner of the building, and Claire watched. But that night, someone was also she. On monitor 08 in the lower left corner, something caught your attention. The image shook, just for half a he, as if there had been a transmission error or interference. Claire frowned and rewound the recording. Nothing. The image was clean. No, she pressed play again, and this time it paused exactly at the second of the tremor. Froze. For a split second, there was a figure standing on the escape, property, dark and looking straight into the camera. She tried to zoom in, but disappeared. Returned to the previous frame, nothing. Moved forward a frame, nothing. Backtracked again, the figure. On the stairs. Claire stood frozen for a few seconds, trying to understand if this was a technical error or some bad joke. But that same morning, an envelope under the security room door. No sender, no seal, just folded and pushed under the wood. Inside was a printed sheet with names. Various some crossed out, others are still readable: Emily, Brian, Sarah, and at the end of the list, and Claire H., no risk, underlined in red. She up and ran into the hallway. Nothing, no sound, nobody on the floors, the cameras all working, and none showed any movement near the room at moment. She returned to her desk in a cold sweat and decided to access the recordings directly on the system, not on the screens. From the server, maybe there was something more. But when trying to the password had been changed. Someone accessed the system, someone knew how to break in, and someone was playing with her. Wasn't the type to freak out easily. It was rational, skeptical, but that went beyond all logic, and that's when she remembered a name. A name that then made no sense. She had read it on the sheet but didn't recognize it. Jacob. He went back to the sheet and looked at it again. There was no there, but I don't verse. There was something typed in tiny, almost erased letters. Observer Project. Folder 033. Jacob closed. Felt her blood run cold. She didn't know that name, never heard of Jacob, but for some reason he was attached to it, and now the associated with it was marked as closed. Hers, how active. She spent the rest of the morning scanning the cameras, every corner of the building. Second recorded, looking for any trace of that figure, that paper, of someone strange. Nothing. But at 5:43 a.m., when the shift was almost over, the in the entrance hall flashed. A single notification appeared in the corner of the screen, something that shouldn't be there. Following one. Claire, her face closer to the screen. That wasn't part of the system. It was like an overlay. How if someone was mirroring another over the live stream? She clicked. The image expanded, and for a second, she saw her own face out in real time, from an angle that didn't exist in that building. An angle coming from behind her. She turned sharply. The room empty. Returned to the screen. The image disappeared. The panel returned to normal, everything as before. But in the dark reflection of she thought she saw something or someone behind the door. And for the first time in years, Claire didn't feel it was no longer security. She was the target, and she knew it. Because that morning, the keyboard, there was something that wasn't there before. A second envelope. With a single sentence typed, "You don't need to be online, was to be. Would you notice the signs before it was too late?" Most people. She only realizes it she is already involved in a manipulator's web. What if someone is already watching you right now? Testing you without you even realizing it? Leave your like before this story disappears from your feed, and sign up now to don't miss the next report's dangerous minds that may be closer than you. Think. Some stories are only told once, and some people never get the chance to hear the warning. Activate the bell and make sure you see the story before it's too late. Brian thought it was a coincidence. It could only be. He had deleted that more than 5 years ago. An impulsive outburst recorded in the early hours of the morning after a fight with his mother. I had it the same day. Never posted, never shared, never even sent. But now he was there, within a link sent by email, an old video. Your voice. Face your raw pain, and along with it a title written in cold, systematic letters. File 107 observed, status complete. Brian locked his room, off the Wi-Fi, and spent the night awake, trying to understand what was happening. Who had access to that? How did they recover a file that he didn't have anymore? And most disturbing, why did it seem like part of something bigger? A structure, a system, a something built calmly. The next day Sarah had her turn. She received a photo, an old print, one she recognized instantly, even before opening. It was a selfie taken in a bar bathroom when she was 19. She was with another girl, both laughing, drunk. On the wall scrawled was the name of someone she wanted to forget, and that's why she never posted the photo. Never. He took it out, looked at it, deleted it. But now, and there she was, received by message from an unknown number, no text, no sender. Just the file name, Sarah03 confidential.jpg, vomited in the bathroom minutes later, because he understood, at that moment, that this was not about exposure. It was about intimate control, emotional invasion, invisible storage. Someone was creating folders with lives, with detail that people would rather forget or hide. One by one, everyone who was followed by Jacob began to tear yourself apart mentally. First came messages, then the distorted memories, the doubt, insomnia, the suspicion that they were being observed, not just online, but physically. became suspicious of the doorbell that rang at 3:17 a.m. every day. There was never anyone, but she was sure it was him, or something left by him. Even it disappeared. Brian swore he saw Jacob across the street near the convenience store. Same coat, even walking calmly. Same look as it doesn't at you, but passes through you. Sarah started having nightmares about notifications, sounds of messages arriving, Instagram, but when he woke up, his cell phone was off, uninstalled. She had deleted everything, and still the messages kept coming. Each new content appeared, photos, audios, screenshots, seemed more specific, more intimate, more disturbing. Things that only someone in the circle could know. Things said quietly in confessions, in moments of weakness. Jacob, in some way, had transformed of their lives. In an emotional dossier, every mistake, every trauma, every deviation, stored with labels and dates. And then, he disappeared, literally, left work. He no longer showed up at the cafe where he drank the same coffee every day. The room he rented was left, except for an envelope with the word closed taped to the mirror. The cell phone was permanently turned off. Social were deleted. The body was never found. But the profile remained active. Stories, views continued. Likes on old posts. The messages, always short, cold, continued to be sent. Always from different accounts, newly created profiles. All with the same pattern. 00 posts, and just following a single person. It was as if Jacob had left something running, an autonomous system. As if someone had taken his place. Brian tried to track down the IPs of the accounts that followed him, hired an expert. But whenever they got close an address, the profile disappeared, deleted in seconds, and a new one appeared in its place. Sarah moved to another city. Bought a new cell phone. But the name of the new contact that appeared on WhatsApp a few days later, it was the same thing she saw in her Jacob. Emily, on the other hand, to face it, returned to Instagram, reopened the account. He started posting, teasing, challenging, and 5 days later, he received a DM from a new no photo, no posts, just a single sentence. "You've already been shut down. Now you're open again." That's not a good. She deleted the account immediately, but an hour later he received a photo printed under the apartment door. It was her, sitting in of the computer, photo taken from outside the window. At the exact moment I read the message, what seemed like just digital surveillance was real. It was in the physical world. Gift. Next. Within. The Observer Project, as it became known to the few who had access to Jacob's material, like a cold, robotic, emotionless structure. But now the messages were personal, direct, humiliating. Someone or something that was feeding that new victims, with new data, with new lives. And then a new list appeared, coming by mail, double-folded. The envelope with the smell of fresh paint. Brian opened it. He recognized the names, all those who were followed, all crossed out, with dates next to, and in the end, a new name, a name that no one knew. Claire H., no risk, no date, and right below it, yours. Before continuing, to ask you a very important question. Have you ever experienced something truly bizarre, or know someone who has experienced something inexplicable? Video was inspired by a story left by a subscriber here in the comments, and your story could be next. So, tell me about your experience in the I'm going to read everything, and who knows, maybe your story will become an exclusive video on the channel. You have something the world needs to know. Now is the time to share. Brian sat motionless for minutes as he opened the folder. The room was silent. Laptop screen cast a pale glow over his face, and the cursor twitched slightly as he hovered the mouse over the file name, Observer Project. It wasn't any name. It didn't seem like an improvised title. It was like the header of an experiment. Cold, clinical. And the organization of the inside only reinforced this. Each folder had a person's name on it. Emily, Sarah, Brian. Yes. There was a folder with his name on it. Each one contained different files, prints of archived messages, audios of personal calls, videos of deleted screenshots of searches made in browsers, and even video call recordings. But what shocked Brian the most was the creation date of these folders. They had all been started long before their first contact with Jacob. The profile follows. Before the first like, before the first message, he was already observing long before he became visible. It was as if the whole of following someone was just the last phase, the final step in a long, slow and methodical process, the completion of a cycle. Clicked on his own folder, his hands sweating and his breathing quick. Inside there was 19 files, the oldest dated 3 years ago. It was an audio. In his room. The voice was yours. The conversation was with his brother who lived in another country. An argument about a mistake he never told anyone. A buried guilt. An intimate secret he thought was dead. But it was there. Marked. Registered. Named Brian Fowler's I Want MP3. On the side, a spreadsheet with cold lines. Subject: emotional betrayal. Condition: unstable. Potential: high. No. Brian didn't know whether to cry or break the notebook right there. But of him wanted to know more because deep down he understood that I wasn't the only one. Returned to the main folder, he clicked on Sarah's. Of her sleeping. Taken by the front camera of a notebook she had already sold. Archived WhatsApp web messages. Messages that only appear to those who access to the main login. How did he achieve all that? When? Brian's mind was spinning, trying to find rationale for something that was already clearly irrational, or absolutely advanced, far beyond common technology, far beyond the of one man. Jacob no longer seemed like a simple stalker. He seemed to have created a system, something that works by itself, or something that now worked with more people behind it. And it was in this whirlwind of thoughts that Brian noticed a different folder. It was empty. No modification date, but with a prominent name, Claire H. He had never heard of this person, not Sarah, not Emily. The name appeared there, alone. Context, but there was something strange about this folder. It was highlighted with a red digital label, under analysis. It was the only one with brand, and unlike the others, it wasn't locked. It did not a password. It was not protected. Upon clicking, the system froze for a second, the screen flickered, and then a new directory appeared. In there, just a single file. A text document titled Preselected. Brian opened it. The message was short. She have a social network, but that doesn't matter. She was noticed. And that's enough. Followed by a line that seemed more like a reminder. Channel 02, integrate camera, do not arouse suspicion. Monitoring begins on 17th. Brian looked at the date in the corner of the screen. It was the 16th. He felt his throat dry up. A discomfort filled his, as if he were reading something that should not. As if when he opened it, he had also been noticed. In the bottom corner of screen, a notification appeared. A new folder has been added to the directory. Automatic, without it clicking. Name. He closed the notebook violently, as if that could erase what he had already seen. But deep down, I knew it was too late. Because everything seemed to respond live. As if someone was watching every click, every look. That night, Brian went to Emily's apartment. It showed she tried to remain calm, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. They knew they couldn't take it to the police. They had already tried before. Evidence disappeared. The files disappeared. Folders mysteriously corrupted themselves, but this time they had a name. Claire H. Someone who didn't know she was already being monitored. Someone who didn't even have an active profile. Someone who was about to enter an invisible where everyone else had already fallen. They decided to find her. But that same morning, while Brian was to search for information, a new notification appeared on his notebook. Even with the Wi-Fi turned off, it was just one line. "No, I'm here. You are not allowed to interfere." The room light flickered. The fan turned off by itself. And in the reflection of the notebook's dark, he swore he saw and the face itself. But not as it was at that moment. It was a file image. Registered. The same red tag, Brian Medium Risk Monitoring, and further down a button he has never seen before. Close folder. But there was no way to, because at that moment the notebook restarted itself, and when he called again, everything was gone. All names, all files, everything except a new screen. Black with a single centralized sentence, "She'll be next, and you will watch." The screen remained for almost a minute, long enough for Brian to feel his heart race like it was about to be ripped from his chest. The seemed dead, but the internal fan was still humming softly, almost like breathing. When the image finally came back, it wasn't for the operating. It didn't go into the folder. It didn't go to the interface from before. It went to a completely dark screen, where a line pulsed in the center of the screen, as if it were being typed in real time. You opened the door. Now you can't close it. No signature. Sender, without any interaction possible. Just that, written as a warning or a sentence. Brian tried to restart the system, pressed keys, tried to shut down. Nothing. Everything locked. And then, out of nowhere, a new folder appeared in the corner of the screen. It formed itself, as if it being created remotely. Name, updated, list X9. The icon was shaking, as if it was corrupted, but when he clicked, the content opened. It was a high-resolution image of a scanned sheet of paper, simple format, without any logo, without letterhead, without stamp. A list of names typed in monospaced font. A Cold Spring, almost military. The names were arranged in alphabetical order. Most of them crossed out a thick red line, each name accompanied by a date. Probably the day the monitoring started or ended. Emily D. 22/03/2022. Sarah L. 04/05/2022 scratched. Brian T. 11/06/2022 scratched. But then, at the end of the list, there was something strange. A name. Hilstein 17/09/2022, not scratched, underlined in red, and just below, a new name. A name that until that moment, it wasn't part of the story. A name Brian never read before. J. Avery. He was paralyzed. He looked around as if the name belonged to someone in the room. As if the sound had whispered, but there was no one. But unlike the other names, this one had no date, it had no status, it wasn't highlighted. And wasn't scratched either. It was like entry had not yet been registered, as if it were the next edition. Brian no longer knew what was real, what was manipulated. The Observador project folder was gone. All the files he viewed were deleted. But curiously, file with the list, the only thing that remained, could not be excluded. He tried deleting, dragging to the trash, renaming. Nothing worked. The only option that appeared was follow the process. And when selecting this option, the system crashed, black screen again. And yet new phrase appeared. She doesn't know yet, but she's already halfway there. Claire had no idea. She had no online profile. I didn't use media. I barely touched my cell phone. And yet, someone knew everything about her. At that moment, Brian understood that Claire wasn't a victim. She was a new piece of the game, a part being tested, an ongoing experiment. The notebook interface then to flash. The windows opened by themselves. Hidden files appeared for milliseconds and then disappeared. The mouse pointer without touching it, and in a matter of seconds the webcam image flashed in the top corner. Brian jerked away from the screen upon the picture was clear. He's sitting, with a tense face. The reflection of your own fear captured in real time. The phrase right below the video window, monitoring activated. ID, Brian T, file closed. New target, Claire H. The feeling was that it didn't matter what he did. Everything was already being controlled. The planned actions, the expected speeches, the reaction predicted. The computer turned by itself. And when he turned it back on, it was completely reset, as if it came from the factory. No programs, no folders. But at the end of the boot image, an almost invisible mark was left. A bas-relief symbol. 3 circles interconnected by a vertical line. And in lowercase letters, Observer Unit 03 ready. From then on, Brian disappeared from the network, never posted again. He was never again. But the legend of Project Observer continued to spread. A bizarre theory for some, a real nightmare for others. Names began to on secret forums, people reporting feeling like they were being watched even without internet, sensors that activated alone, breathing coming from turned-off devices, silent notifications, profiles that followed, just a person. And in all these reports, in all prints, in all the name was always the same, Claire H. She was still on the list. And the worst, it was the only one didn't know that yet. You're starting to understand, aren't you, the stories, that they are not random. There is an A pattern, and now that you've come this far, you've seen too much to turn back. If you felt anything strange during this video, A on your arm, a silence that became heavier than it should have been, comment below. It's all you'll notice. Other people have started to notice too. If this left you with that feeling that something is wrong, leave your like. This helps content stay visible, at least as long as it's safe to keep up. And sign up now, because what comes next, it's older than you might think. Then it seems, Claire saw something that shouldn't have been there, and in the next video you'll see it through her eyes. But only if you watch it before they take it off the air. The next episode is now on your screen. And if you stop here, it may be the last one on the That You Still Don't Understand.